She hid between the billionaire's legs to escape and accidentally stole his heart. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to today's story. Picture this. You're walking down a quiet street, minding your own business, when suddenly you're chased by danger. No one can help. The only thing you can do is run and hide. Our main character, in a moment of panic, takes cover between the legs of a tall stranger sitting at a cafe. Heart pounding, she presses herself into the tight space, praying to stay unnoticed. Her mind races, her thoughts spinning. She never thought she'd be in such a situation, but she's desperate. She has no choice. As she huddles, trying to stay as still as possible, she can't help but feel the stranger's gaze shift towards her. Is he going to help, or will he just ignore her? In a moment of silence, he does the unexpected. Instead of calling for help or making her feel worse, he subtly adjusts his position to shield her from view. He doesn't ask questions, doesn't make a scene, he simply offers her a quiet sense of security in the chaos. And that's the moment everything changes. The stranger, a billionaire CEO, never imagined that this small act of kindness would set a course for an unexpected connection. But for her, this was just the beginning of something that would alter the trajectory of both their lives. What started as an escape turned into something far greater. Stay tuned to see how one split-second decision leads to a life neither of them saw coming. The moment she hid between the billionaire's legs to escape, she never could have imagined what would happen next. After that night, she couldn't shake the memory of how he had helped her, quietly protecting her without a second thought. She felt something shift in her, a spark of hope she hadn't known she needed. Days passed, but she couldn't forget the stranger's act of kindness. It was hard to explain, but she knew that their lives had somehow crossed in a way that would lead to something unexpected, and she wasn't the only one thinking about it. Liam Parker, the man who had unknowingly stolen her heart, found himself unable to get the moment out of his mind. His usual sharp focus on business was clouded by thoughts of the woman who had hidden under his protection. He hadn't planned on getting involved. He wasn't the type to get emotionally invested in people he didn't know, but something about her had affected him more deeply than he cared to admit. He had done it instinctively, without thinking. He had just wanted to help, but now he couldn't stop wondering, who was she? What was her story? Liam couldn't let it go. He needed to find out more. So, a few days later, he did something completely out of character. He tracked her down. Using the little information he had, he managed to find her at the same cafe where she worked. He had to see her again, to know if the connection he felt was real. He walked into the cafe, heart racing a little faster than usual. His eyes scanned the room, and then he saw her. There she was, sitting at the counter, her focus on the task at hand. She didn't notice him at first, but when she did, her eyes widened in shock, her lips parted, unsure of what to say. He could tell she recognized him, but was trying to place him. He smiled warmly and approached her. "Hi, I don't know if you remember me," he said gently, "but I wanted to check on you." She blinked a few times, still in disbelief. You're the guy from that night?" she asked, her voice a little shaky. "Yes, I am," Liam replied, smiling slightly. "I wanted to make sure you were okay. I never really got the chance to properly introduce myself. I'm Liam." She hesitated for a moment, her eyes still wary but curious. I'm Emma," she replied, unsure of what to make of this situation. "I'm sorry, I don't mean to intrude," Liam continued, trying to ease the tension. "I just felt like I should see if you were all right after everything that happened." Emma nodded slowly, still trying to process everything. "I'm fine," she said quietly. "But I wasn't expecting to see you again. That night was unexpected." Liam chuckled softly. "I understand. Believe me, I didn't expect it either." There was a brief silence, and then he spoke again. "Actually, I was wondering if we could talk more. Outside of the cafe, I mean. I know this sounds crazy, but there's something about that night, and about you, that I can't stop thinking about." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't expected to feel the way she did now, but something in his eyes, something in his voice, made her feel like this was more than just an accidental meeting. She agreed to meet him outside of work. That evening, they met at a small, cozy cafe away from the hustle and bustle of the city. The atmosphere was calm, and they found a quiet table in the corner. They started talking about their lives, their backgrounds, and their dreams. Emma felt comfortable with him, more so than she had felt with anyone in a long time. As they spoke, she began to see a different side of him. He wasn't just the billionaire CEO. He was thoughtful, kind, and surprisingly down to earth. But there was still a part of her that held back, unsure if she could trust him. After all, he was still a stranger to her. And yet, she couldn't deny the pull she felt toward him. As the evening progressed, their conversation flowed effortlessly. They talked about their pasts, their families, and what they wanted for the future. It was during this time that Liam began to realize something he hadn't expected. He wasn't just helping her because he felt sorry for her. No, there was more to it than that. He liked her. And not just because she was vulnerable or in need of help. He liked her for who she was, her strength, her intelligence, and her genuine spirit. As the night came to a close, Liam stood up, his expression serious yet hopeful. "Emma," he said softly, "I don't know what's going to happen from here, but I want to get to know you better. I want to see where this goes, if you're open to it." Emma's heart raced. She hadn't expected him to say that, but there was something about his words that felt genuine. She took a deep breath, letting the words sink in. "I don't know what to say," she whispered, "but I'm willing to see where this goes too." The next few weeks passed by in a blur for Emma. What had started as a fleeting encounter had quickly turned into something more. She and Liam found themselves spending more and more time together, slowly getting to know one another. He was everything she never expected a billionaire to be: kind, humble, and incredibly thoughtful. They talked about their dreams, their pasts, and their futures, finding a deep connection that neither of them had anticipated. Emma had always been skeptical about love, especially when it came to someone like Liam. She was used to struggling and fighting for everything she had, and she wasn't sure if she could allow herself to be vulnerable enough to let someone in, especially someone so powerful and rich. But with every conversation, with every moment they shared, she felt the walls she had built around herself begin to crumble. One evening, after spending an entire day together at a local art exhibit, Liam took her to a quiet spot on a rooftop overlooking the city. The view was breathtaking, with the lights of the city stretching out in every direction. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the cool night air brushing against their faces, until Liam finally spoke. "Emma," he said softly, his voice low, "I've been thinking a lot about us, about everything we've shared so far. And I know it might seem fast, but I don't want to waste any more time." Emma turned to him, her heart racing. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam reached for her hand, his touch gentle yet firm. "I mean that I want to be with you," he said, his eyes searching hers for any sign of doubt. "I know it's crazy, but I can't deny how I feel. I've never met anyone like you before, and I don't want to let you go." Emma's breath caught in her throat as she processed his words. She had felt the same way, but hearing him say it out loud made it all the more real. "Liam," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I never thought this could happen. I didn't think I could feel this way about someone like you." Liam smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair away from her face. "You're not just anyone, Emma. You're special. And I know I'm asking a lot, but will you give us a chance?" For a moment, Emma was silent, her mind racing. She had always been afraid of getting hurt, of letting someone in only to be let down. But in that moment, as she looked into Liam's eyes, she realized that sometimes you had to take risks to find happiness. "Yes," she said finally, her voice steady and sure. "Yes, I'll give us a chance." Liam's face lit up with a smile that made her heart skip a beat. He leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead, and for the first time in a long while, Emma felt like everything was going to be okay. As their relationship grew, so did the challenges they faced. Liam's life was complex and filled with responsibilities, and Emma's own past still had a way of resurfacing at the most inconvenient times. But no matter the obstacles, they always found a way to work through them together. One evening, as they sat in Liam's penthouse, talking about their future, he turned to her with a serious look in his eyes. "Emma," he said, his tone more intense than usual, "there's something I need to tell you." Emma looked at him, a sense of unease creeping up her spine. "What is it?" she asked, her voice cautious. Liam hesitated for a moment before continuing. "There's something about my past that I haven't told you," he said, his voice tinged with regret. "It's something I've been running from for a long time, and I think it's time you know the truth." Emma's heart raced as she tried to prepare herself for whatever he was about to say. Was it something that would change everything between them? Was he hiding something about his past that she couldn't accept? Liam took a deep breath before continuing. I was once in a relationship with someone who wasn't the right person for me, he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. That relationship led to a series of events that have haunted me for years. I've tried to move on from it, but I need you to know the truth, especially if we're going to build something together. Emma listened intently, her mind spinning as she tried to process everything he was saying. She could see the pain in his eyes, the vulnerability that he rarely showed to anyone. And in that moment, she realized that despite the darkness of his past, he was trying to be open and honest with her. Liam, she said softly, thank you for telling me. I know it must have been hard, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm here with you, no matter what. Liam looked at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. He reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. I don't deserve you, Emma, he said, his voice thick with emotion. But I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know how much you mean to me. And just like that, Emma knew she had found someone who was worth fighting for, someone who was willing to face his past in order to build a better future together. Weeks went by, and as time passed, Emma and Liam's relationship grew stronger. What had started as a random meeting turned into something neither of them had expected, but both were willing to nurture. They spent their days exploring the city, having long conversations about everything and nothing, and slowly, Emma began to let her guard down. She had never felt this way before. She had always been cautious, skeptical even, but with Liam, she felt safe. Safe enough to dream about a future that seemed more possible than ever before. Yet as much as she had opened up to him, there were still pieces of her past she hadn't shared. There were parts of her life that she had kept hidden, parts that were too painful to talk about. And despite everything that had happened between them, she couldn't shake the feeling that if she didn't tell Liam about her past, it might come back to haunt them. One night, as they sat together on the balcony of Liam's penthouse, the city lights twinkling below them, Emma took a deep breath. The moment felt right. She knew it was time to share her story. Liam, she began softly, her voice tinged with uncertainty. There's something I need to tell you. Something I've never shared with anyone before. Liam turned to her, his gaze steady and reassuring. You can tell me anything, Emma. You know that, he said gently, his hand resting on hers. She hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to start, but she knew that this was the only way forward. When I was younger, she began, I had a very different life. My family wasn't wealthy. We struggled a lot. I grew up in a small apartment with my mother and brother, and we barely made ends meet. I worked multiple jobs to help support us, but it was never enough. I always dreamed of something more, of a life that wasn't defined by struggle, but it felt so far out of reach. Liam listened intently, his eyes never leaving hers. I don't think I've ever really told anyone this, but I was ashamed of where I came from, Emma continued, her voice softening. I felt like I had to hide it, like if people knew the truth, they wouldn't want to be around me. So I kept everything inside. I didn't let anyone in, not even my closest friends. And when I met you, when I started to feel something for you, I realized I couldn't keep hiding anymore. I needed to be honest with you, with myself. There was a long pause as Liam processed her words. Emma felt her heart race in her chest, waiting for his response. She had shared so much of her soul with him, and all she wanted now was for him to understand. After what felt like an eternity, Liam squeezed her hand and leaned in closer. Emma, he said, his voice warm and sincere, I don't care about your past. I care about who you are now, about the person you've become. You're strong, and you've worked hard to get where you are. And that's what matters to me. Emma felt the weight in her chest begin to lift as his words sank in. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen, truly seen for who she was. She smiled softly, grateful for his kindness. Thank you, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I needed to hear that. Liam smiled back at her, his eyes filled with tenderness. You don't ever have to hide anything from me, Emma. I'm here for you no matter what. I've never been more certain about anything in my life. As the night wore on, Emma felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. She had shared her truth, and it hadn't changed anything between them. If anything, it had only brought them closer. The trust that had always been there between them deepened, and Emma felt more confident than ever that this was the right relationship for her. But as much as they had grown together, there were still some lingering doubts in the back of her mind. Emma knew that Liam's world was complex, filled with people who wanted something from him, and she wasn't sure if she could ever fully fit into that world. Liam, on the other hand, had always been transparent with her, and he never seemed to expect her to change for him. But there was still a part of her that wondered, Could their love survive in a world so different from the one she had always known? A few days later, Liam surprised her with an invitation to a charity event he was hosting. "It's a gala for local artists," he explained. "I'd really love for you to come with me. I want you by my side." Emma felt a wave of nervousness wash over her. A gala? With the kind of people Liam interacted with on a daily basis? She wasn't sure if she was ready for that world, for the kind of attention that would come with being seen on his arm. But then she looked at Liam, and something inside her shifted. He had always made her feel like she belonged. Maybe it was time to believe it herself. "Okay," she said, her voice steady. "I'll go with you." Weeks went by, and as time passed, Emma and Liam's relationship grew stronger. What had started as a random meeting turned into something neither of them had expected, but both were willing to nurture. They spent their days exploring the city, having long conversations about everything and nothing, and slowly, Emma began to let her guard down. She had never felt this way before. She had always been cautious, skeptical even, but with Liam, she felt safe. Safe enough to dream about a future that seemed more possible than ever before. Yet, as much as she had opened up to him, there were still pieces of her past she hadn't shared. There were parts of her life that she had kept hidden, parts that were too painful to talk about. And despite everything that had happened between them, she couldn't shake the feeling that if she didn't tell Liam about her past, it might come back to haunt them. One night, as they sat together on the balcony of Liam's penthouse, the city lights twinkling below them, Emma took a deep breath. The moment felt right. She knew it was time to share her story. "Liam," she began softly, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "There's something I need to tell you, something I've never shared with anyone before." Liam turned to her, his gaze steady and reassuring. "You can tell me anything, Emma. You know that," he said gently, his hand resting on hers. She hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to start, but she knew that this was the only way forward. "When I was younger," she began, "I had a very different life. My family wasn't wealthy. We struggled a lot. I grew up in a small apartment with my mother and brother, and we barely made ends meet. I worked multiple jobs to help support us, but it was never enough. I always dreamed of something more, of a life that wasn't defined by struggle, but it felt so far out of reach." Liam listened intently, his eyes never leaving hers. "I don't think I've ever really told anyone this, but I was ashamed of where I came from," Emma continued, her voice softening. "I felt like I had to hide it, like if people knew the truth they wouldn't want to be around me. So I kept everything inside. I didn't let anyone in, not even my closest friends. And when I met you, when I started to feel something for you, I realized I couldn't keep hiding anymore. I needed to be honest with you, with myself." There was a long pause as Liam processed her words. Emma felt her heart race in her chest, waiting for his response. She had shared so much of her soul with him, and all she wanted now was for him to understand. After what felt like an eternity, Liam squeezed her hand and leaned in closer. "Emma," he said, his voice warm and sincere, "I don't care about your past. I care about who you are now, about the person you've become. You're strong, and you've worked hard to get where you are. And that's what matters to me." Emma felt the weight in her chest begin to lift as his words sank in. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen, truly seen, for who she was. She smiled softly, grateful for his kindness. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I needed to hear that." Liam smiled back at her, his eyes filled with tenderness. "You don't ever have to hide anything from me, Emma. I'm here for you, no matter what. I've never been more certain about anything in my life." As the night wore on, Emma felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. She had shared her truth, and it hadn't changed anything between them. If anything, it had only brought them closer. The trust that had always been there between them deepened, and Emma felt more confident than ever that this was the right relationship for her. But as much as they had grown together, there were still some lingering doubts in the back of her mind. Emma knew that Liam's world was complex, filled with people who wanted something from him, and she wasn't sure if she could ever fully fit into that world. Liam, on the other hand, had always been transparent with her, and he never seemed to expect her to change for him. But there was still a part of her that wondered, could their love survive in a world so different from the one she had always known? A few days later, Liam surprised her with an invitation to a charity event he was hosting. "It's a gala for local artists," he explained. "I'd really love for you to come with me. I want you by my side." Emma felt a wave of nervousness wash over her. A gala? With the kind of people Liam interacted with on a daily basis? She wasn't sure if she was ready for that world, for the kind of attention that would come with being seen on his arm. But then she looked at Liam, and something inside her shifted. He had always made her feel like she belonged. Maybe it was time to believe it herself. "Okay," she said, her voice steady. "I'll go with you." As the days passed, Emma found herself sinking deeper into her own thoughts. The revelation at the charity event had hit her harder than she expected. She had always prided herself on being independent, on making it through life on her own terms. But discovering Liam's true identity had shaken her to her core. She had felt connected to him, someone who had seemed so real, so grounded, but now everything seemed like a lie. She wondered if their entire relationship had been built on a foundation of deceit. Did he really care about her? Or was she just another part of his personal experiment? She paced back and forth in her apartment, feeling the weight of the situation bear down on her. She tried to focus on the work that needed to be done for her upcoming art show, but it was impossible. The gallery was supposed to be her big break, her chance to prove to herself and to the world that she was more than just a waitress. But now, every brushstroke on her canvas felt empty. She felt like a fraud. The small glimmer of hope she had held onto seemed to be slipping away. The phone call came later that night, interrupting her thoughts. It was Liam. She hesitated before answering, her heart racing in her chest. "Emma," Liam's voice sounded through the receiver, calm and steady. "Can we talk?" She felt her pulse quicken. She had wanted to avoid this conversation, to ignore the awkwardness that now hung between them. But she knew it was unavoidable. "What's there to talk about, Liam?" she asked, her voice laced with bitterness. "I understand how you feel," he said softly, "but I need you to know that everything I did, everything was real. It's not about my money, Emma. It never was. I care about you. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want to make things right." Emma felt a surge of emotion, a mixture of anger, hurt, and confusion. She had been vulnerable with him, had shared parts of her life she had kept hidden from everyone else. And now, it felt like he had used that vulnerability against her. She couldn't ignore the pain in her chest, the fear that she had been naive, that she had let herself fall for someone who never truly cared for her. But then, as if by instinct, she found herself speaking, words tumbling out before she could stop them. "You're right. You're right about everything," she said, her voice breaking. "I don't know who you are anymore. How am I supposed to trust you after everything? I don't even know what was real between us." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Liam spoke again, his voice quieter, almost pleading. "I don't want to lose you, Emma. I know I messed up, but please. Let me show you who I really am. Let me prove to you that I want this. I want you." She closed her eyes, the rawness of his words sinking deep into her. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust him, but the doubt in her heart was too strong. It was too much to take in. "How can I believe you, Liam?" she whispered almost to herself. "How can I believe anything you say when you've lied to me from the start?" The silence stretched between them, thick and uncomfortable. She heard him exhale slowly. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want to earn it, and I want to earn your trust. Please, just give me a chance. I'll make it up to you, I promise." Emma sat down on the couch, her mind spinning. Could she trust him again? Could she allow herself to open up to him, to let him back into her life? She had never been one to forgive easily, but something about his voice, the sincerity behind it, made her want to give him a chance. Maybe she was just scared. Scared of being hurt again, scared of losing herself in someone else. But at the same time, she knew she couldn't keep running away from what was between them. She had to make a choice. "Okay," she said finally, her voice soft but firm. "I'll give you a chance, but you have to be honest with me from now on. No more lies, Liam. I won't accept anything less." Liam's voice filled with relief, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Emma allowed herself to believe in the possibility of something more. Maybe it wouldn't be easy, but she was willing to try. For him, for them. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions as Emma and Liam slowly began to rebuild their connection. They spent hours talking, truly talking, about their fears, their hopes, and their dreams. Liam was open with her, more vulnerable than she had ever seen him, and Emma, despite her reservations, found herself falling for him all over again. But it wasn't just about love anymore. It was about trust. It was about building something real, something solid. And, as they worked through their past mistakes, Emma realized that maybe, just maybe, they had a future together. And so, when the night of her art show finally arrived, everything felt different. She was nervous, of course, but she also felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time. The gallery was filled with people, artists and collectors alike, all admiring her work. She stood at the center of it all, smiling to herself as she watched the guests react to her paintings. But then her eyes landed on Liam. He stood by the doorway, looking at her with admiration, his presence a silent promise of support. In that moment, Emma realized that the journey wasn't over yet. They still had a long way to go, but they had taken the first step. And for the first time in a long time, Emma was ready to face whatever came next, together. As the weeks passed, Emma and Liam found themselves growing closer, despite the uncertainties that still lingered between them. It wasn't easy, but they were trying. Every day felt like a new chapter, one that was slowly but steadily being written. Emma's art show had been a success, but it wasn't just the compliments or the sales that had made it special. It was the feeling of finally being seen for who she was. For the first time, she felt like she was no longer hiding in the shadows of her past, and that feeling brought a sense of peace she hadn't expected. However, as much as things had changed, Emma knew the path ahead wouldn't always be smooth. Liam's world was still a far cry from hers. His business empire, his lifestyle, the people he interacted with, they all seemed so far removed from her humble reality. Emma often found herself questioning if she truly belonged in his life. She had come from nothing, a waitress with a dream and a struggle. Could she fit into his world of high-rise buildings and luxury? Could they build a future together when their lives seemed so different? One evening, as they sat in a quiet cafe, Emma couldn't help but voice the doubts that had been weighing on her mind. "Liam," she started, her voice hesitant, "I don't know if I can do this. You're living in a world that's so different from mine, and I keep thinking, do I even belong in it?" She looked down at her hands, her fingers nervously twisting the napkin on the table. "I've spent so long fighting to survive, and now I'm not sure if I'm even capable of trusting that this is real, that I'm not just a charity case or some kind of experiment." Liam reached across the table, gently taking her hand in his. His touch was warm, grounding, and for a moment Emma felt the weight of her fears lift. "Emma," he said, his voice steady and full of conviction, "you're not a charity case. You never have been. I don't care about what you don't have. I care about who you are. You've got something that no amount of money can buy, and that's your heart, your honesty. You're not here because of what you can give me. You're here because I want you here. I want you by my side, not because of what you can offer me, but because you're the one I want." His words hit her hard, and for a moment she was silent, trying to absorb what he was saying. Could it really be that simple? Could he really want her, despite the differences between them? But just as quickly, doubt crept in again. "But your life, your world, it's not the same as mine," Emma said, shaking her head. "I don't even know how I fit in there. You've got people who expect things from you, people who want things from you. And I'm just me, a girl with big dreams and not a lot to show for it." Liam smiled softly, squeezing her hand. "I know it's not easy, and I don't expect you to fit into my world right away. But I also don't want you to change who you are to fit into mine. We can build a new world, one that works for both of us. It won't be perfect, and it won't be easy. But I'm willing to try, Emma. I'm willing to try with you, together." Emma felt her heart soften, her fears slowly beginning to dissolve as she looked into Liam's eyes. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could make this work. Maybe the differences between them didn't have to tear them apart. Maybe they could find common ground, and in doing so, build something strong and real. But just as she began to relax, a sudden thought hit her. What about your family, your friends? What will they think of me? She was worried about how they would perceive her, a simple waitress, someone with no prestigious background to speak of. She feared she would always be seen as the outsider, someone who didn't belong. Liam's expression didn't waver. "My family and friends will just have to accept you, because you're the one I've chosen," he said, his tone resolute. "I don't care about their opinions if they can't see what I see in you. What matters is us. And if they can't accept that, then it's on them, not on you." His words were like a balm to her aching heart, and for the first time Emma felt a sense of peace wash over her. She didn't need to prove herself to anyone. She just needed to be herself. And for the first time in her life, that was enough. As the evening wore on, they talked more, laughing about the small things, sharing stories and dreams. For the first time, Emma allowed herself to fully embrace the connection they had. She wasn't sure where their journey would take them, but for the first time in a long while, she was ready to take the next step with Liam by her side. The road ahead would still be challenging, but together they would face it. And as she looked into his eyes, she knew that no matter what came next, they would find their way, one step at a time. Months had passed since that conversation at the cafe, and things had begun to feel more natural between Emma and Liam. They were no longer two people from entirely different worlds, but rather two individuals learning how to build something new together, with trust and love as the foundation. Emma's art studio was starting to come together, and she was finally starting to see her dreams take shape. The gallery show had been a huge success, but now she was planning for something even bigger: her own space, a place where she could not only create, but inspire others. It was everything she had ever wanted, and she knew it wouldn't have been possible without Liam's support. He had been by her side every step of the way, not just as a partner, but as a friend, a mentor, and someone who believed in her more than anyone else had. It was a far cry from the woman she had once been, unsure of her place in the world, too scared to believe that anything good could ever happen to her. But Liam had changed all that. He had made her see that she deserved happiness, that she was worthy of love and success. One evening, after a long day of work, Emma stood in her new studio, staring at the unfinished paintings on the wall. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm glow through the large windows. It was quiet, and for the first time, Emma felt at peace. She was exactly where she was meant to be. Her phone buzzed on the table, interrupting her thoughts. It was a text from Liam. "I have a surprise for you. Meet me at the gallery in 30 minutes. Emma smiled to herself, curious about what he had planned. She quickly grabbed her coat and made her way to the gallery. When she arrived, she found the space empty, except for Liam, who was standing in front of a large canvas. As she walked toward him, her heart skipped a beat. The painting was of her, a portrait capturing the essence of who she had become: a woman strong and confident, with a quiet determination that radiated from the canvas. The colors were bold, the strokes full of emotion, and there she was, at the center of it all. "Liam," Emma whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "It's beautiful." Liam turned to her, his eyes soft with admiration. "You are beautiful," he said. "And this is just the beginning, Emma. You've come so far, and I want you to know that I'm proud of you. I'm proud of everything you've achieved, and I'll always be here to support you." Emma felt tears welling in her eyes as she took a step closer to him. "I don't know what I would have done without you," she said, her voice trembling. Liam smiled and took her hand. "You would have done just fine," he said. "But I'm glad I was here, because I want to be here for the rest of it too." Emma's heart swelled with gratitude as she looked at him, the man who had been her rock, her greatest supporter, and now, someone she could see a future with. Without thinking, she leaned in and kissed him, a kiss filled with everything they had been through together. When they pulled away, Emma smiled, her heart full. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too," Liam replied softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "And I always will." It was in that moment that Emma knew without a doubt that this was her happy ending. The road they had traveled together had been long, but every step had been worth it. They had overcome obstacles, faced doubts, and built something real and lasting. And as they stood together in the gallery, surrounded by Emma's art, Emma realized that sometimes the best things in life come when you least expect them. The love she had with Liam wasn't just a fairy tale. It was real, and it was the love she had always dreamed of. As the night went on, Emma and Liam made plans for the future. They talked about expanding the studio, about traveling the world together, and about all the dreams they had yet to achieve. But no matter what the future held, Emma knew that as long as they had each other, they could face anything. They had found something truly special, and nothing in the world could ever change that. And so, as they left the gallery hand in hand, Emma couldn't help but smile. The story that had begun with a mistake, a wrong table, and a twist of fate had turned into the best thing that had ever happened to her. It had led her to a life she had never imagined, a life filled with love, support, and endless possibilities. And she knew, without a doubt, that this was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where every moment was worth fighting for.